So I'm delighted and very pleased to welcome today Nabeela Akhtar, an educator, a psychologist focused on inclusivity and race equity. Nabeela has a background in research, NHS, social care, work in the third sector. And her work is all about sustainability and impact, developing and adapting to effect positive, equitable changes that benefit not only individuals, but the organisations they work with and the wider communities. Now, interestingly, Nabeela is a GEM graduate. She has been part of the GEM programme and is an absolutely wonderful resource for what we call our Participants Council. And this is where participants come together to help us make sure that our project is doing what it should be doing and delivering on our goals. So without just one further thing before I introduce Nabeela, questions. As this is a webinar, if you could put your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom or the chat box, anything you'd like to ask, I'll monitor that and make sure we do our very best to answer your questions for you. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Nabeela. Nabeela.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm going to talk a little bit about diversity in the workplace, why your business needs diversity, smarter recruiting tips, resources and partners. And I'm just going to talk about some examples of different experiences and how your business organization can benefit from being more diverse. So first of all, do you have a recruitment or employee retention crisis? It seems like a lot of people do just now, but one of the ways of addressing that is by recruiting smarter, by employing people from all sorts of backgrounds. You might think you already do that. You might think your ads and your interviewing and your process is inclusive, but it isn't necessarily. And you will have found with COVID, you ended up making all kinds of different changes and adjustments in your organization to keep your business going, to make things work for yourselves as employers, but also for your employees. And now we're in a year or so in, and you're having all these stumbling blocks on recruitment and getting employees who will stay. Some of that same flexibility that had to be used, not in the same way, can help you here in terms of recruiting where you haven't necessarily targeted or where you think you've been open, but you're actually, your descriptions and the way you recruit has placed barriers of people. Okay, full handout. Yeah, that's the one. Click on to slide 3. Okay, so diversity and evolving, it's central for business. Any short, medium or long-term solutions for your business, any time of in attracting a diverse client base, in having people use their spending power there, in representing the society you're in. So you can recruit for success with an accessible, inclusive, welcoming culture, baking in flexibility and support, and accessing support to help you recruit smarter and retain staff. So I'm going to touch on why your business needs diversity. That's slide 4. So I've got some quotes from Sam Holliday, the Federation for Small Businesses in Gloucestershire. And he talks about, we used to talk about a skills shortage in this country, but it's beyond that now. Everyone seems to be suffering from a staff crisis. And some of this demand was created by people starting their own business, with 750,000 new businesses in the UK. So I'd ask you, why do you think it is? Why do you think it is that we've got so many new businesses? We've got so many people also freelancing, or so many people doing second jobs. And we've got so many people who are unemployed and so many job vacancies. And Gloucester College Principal Matthew Burgess says, I've never known anything like it. For us, our #1 challenge is getting staff with the skills to teach the employees of tomorrow. Do we have a skills shortage? I'm not sure that would be applied to many areas. Yes, there are areas where there is a particular need for particular skills and qualification, and we can be short of that. But in many cases, part of the problem is that they're not being retained. People are not staying. Why aren't they staying in roles? And this is the case in all sorts of different sectors. Workplace culture can be part of the reason why. And I'm specifically going to talk about diversity in terms of ethnically diverse and culturally diverse people, and also a little bit about disability. When I say disability, I'm using the language that is often used to record someone who has a health issue, and that can include mental health, or somebody who has a particular, who's not neurotypical, who's not who has an impairment, what we would consider an impairment, because our society sort of isn't built to accommodate for people with different wants and needs. It's always tending to focus on what the typical is. So for ethnically diverse people, between the first quarter and second of 2020 and 2021, there was a 3 times higher unemployment rate. And the impact of COVID-related unemployment was 26 times worse compared with white applicants. And it's especially the case with people from Black, Afro-Caribbean, Pakistani, and Bangladeshi backgrounds. Applicants, they tend to send in 60 times more applications before they find a position. And sometimes they don't find a position. This isn't really a constructive situation for business. It's not a constructive situation for people. It is one that does hurt people's confidence, does take opportunities away. And it's not that there isn't a skill set there, but even it's that certain skill sets and certain backgrounds aren't necessarily valued, even when we think they are. Having workplace that values different experiences as well as similar adds value and broadens organizational appeal to employees and clients, because now you've got this situation where actually it's particularly evident that organizations have to do the work to attract people. When you're employing someone, you've also got to think about you're being interviewed too. The impression you make, your openness, your accessibility, from the point of advertising right through interview, right through to onboarding or induction and onward. That is part of the process of whether you keep people, whether you get the people you need. So having to review how you do it, and if it sort of is doing what it's meant to, and if it's not, why not, is quite important. And with diversity, with disability, with inclusivity, people don't often seem to think to change things until they find they have a problem. And waiting for that, it makes it more work actually, because there's a huge talent pool that's untapped in many ways, that where CVs are more varied, or where people are working in different kinds of ways. And it's they might not be applying because your descriptions are so focused on all these not qualities, all these qualifications and so on, that don't necessarily immediately match what most people are talking about. The language may be unappealing and putting people off, saying, oh, there's a thing where women are 60% less likely to apply to certain roles. They're less likely to apply where there's a long list of qualifications and where they don't match them all. And whereas men will apply to things in a much more open way, in a way that sort of reflects accessibility. Yeah, quite a few do use anonymized applications. There's a question coming in, but it does vary quite a bit, and it doesn't necessarily help if the job descriptions seek certain qualifications or certain background, and rather than focusing on what you want and need, because they don't always match. So anonymized applications can and do help exclude things like bias, but alone they don't really make it fair and equitable and truly equal. It also means that if you're looking in very narrow for traits and characteristics, people won't necessarily think they have those qualities, unless, but they may well have them. And those who are more marginalized are less likely to, apply for things that seem out of reach, especially when there's such a high rate of rejection. So we have a higher rate of disability in actually ethnically and culturally diverse people too. But disability is a huge kind of banner umbrella term. And what that means is so varied. And it doesn't mean that someone can't do a job. It doesn't mean that someone can't learn to do a job. So at the end of 2020, 1 in 5 of the 8.4 million disabled people in the UK were employed. But that dropped quite a lot. In Gloucestershire, I think Inclusivity Works and GEM have done pretty well, really, and other organisations, but it's still a huge gap. And there's a 30% employment gap between disabled and non-disabled people, and that's in sort of normal times. And just 48% of people surveyed agreed the employer was flexible and made sufficient adjustments. And this got worse with COVID, in that, yes, people may have been at increased risk, but that they may have had to just leave their jobs. And because there wasn't alternatives, or it was really stressful trying to get adjustments and an uphill battle. It doesn't need to be an uphill battle, because if you're not used to thinking about these things, about being accessible, or you think you already are and you don't act, you're going to get things wrong, because it isn't a normal practice for you to be more inclusive. Companies who most focus on racial and ethnic diversity, and moving on to this, are 36% more likely to have above average profits. That's from a McKinsey report in 2019. And they looked at not just large businesses, they looked at a variety of businesses, and they looked at them across 15 countries, including the UK. And the McGregor-Smith review in 2017 sort of stated quite clearly that ethnic minority talent fully utilised, it would boost the UK economy by an estimated 24 billion. And given that, it's kind of ridiculous that we still have these systems that exclude rather than include, because there's a benefit to individuals of being in employment. It's not a case of people not wanting to work normally. There may be barriers to work, which is much more, pretty much the majority of the situation. And valuing different talent experiences, it pays in recruiting. You'll get more people applying, you get more of a varied application set. You may be thinking in very narrow terms, and in terms of what your own experience is, in terms of what your company has historically done, that seemed like a good thing. And it may well have been a good thing, but it can always be improved on. And if you keep doing it the same way, you're not going to get this diversity of thinking, this diversity of ideas, these different ways of working. You can only see the picture you know, and expanding that picture. And it's not just that, if you have more people from diverse backgrounds, more Black people, more Asian people around, that it's suddenly going to be completely different thinking. It's just people have different experiences, as well as they could have the same qualifications, but they will have different experiences. And they can have varied qualifications and have the same knowledge and skill at doing certain things. And if you're not tapping into that, you are missing out. At a time when you're in a recruitment crisis and a retention crisis, you can see the cost, because you're having a blanket problem, but it'll be worse in those areas. It pays. So examples to be avoided. Sorry, my slides have. smaller organizations too have done work to be more inclusive in the past few years. And you have the disability friendly employer label that some organizations have. And what that asks people to do, it's a very low minimum standard. On most part, it isn't enough to truly maximize the benefits you'll get from a diverse workforce, but it does help. Equally so, equal opportunities type of things, there'll be codes. But the McGregor-Smith review had recommendations to do with recording sort of what representation you have in your business, how many employees, people in different levels of your organization. And disability as part of that can help you figure out you can see the benefits more clearly. You can see the difference. You can compare pre and post these things. You can also just look at how your organization is doing. And people are attracted to inclusive organizations. This is a draw. And if you're new to working on these things, there are many ways to get going and get things happening quite quickly if that's a road you want to go through. It helps to have policies that are inclusive, to have people who are, we're not all going to be equally approachable to have these conversations. So when you have somebody who's a point of contact on, say, a job ad, make sure that they are approachable, that they are friendly, that they're going to be able to talk about these different things if they come up. You don't necessarily want to wait for the person to ask about things around disability. You want to have that a little bit about you being an inclusive player in your job ads, really, and you want to show it, not just tell it. So examples to be avoided is lack of accessibility, lack of approachability, lack of opportunities to develop in a role, lack of training, poor work conditions connected to ethnicity, disability. I could think of loads of examples of this, but I'm probably going to pick a healthcare one, not because it's one that applies to me in this case, but just because it's one most of us, I think, will have heard about. Is during the pandemic, especially the early days, you had more Black and Asian staff and East Asian staff struggling to access PPE, personal protective equipment. And this was people working in care settings, in the NHS, in private care, all sorts. And those organizations probably didn't think about whether these things were less accessible for people from this background, but there was plenty of evidence before that their workplaces weren't so equitable in this way, in terms of representation at higher levels, in terms of progress opportunities, in terms of lived experience guiding decision making. And you saw it in the worst circumstance having the worst impact, where people did die, did get ill trying to do their job, help and protect others. And it became a news item. And there was other things like relating to this too. Now those are extreme examples, and you don't have an extreme example like that. It's unlikely to anyone here will have that, but you need to think about if your organization is somewhere that people from different backgrounds can, whatever their background, there's someone they can approach if there's a concern, if there's an issue, if they're struggling. That doesn't mean that you're going to be sat around all day talking about this. It doesn't mean that you're going to use loads of time on it. You set yourself up to succeed by going to organizations who can support you and having, somewhat a couple of people ideally who are good for this. So stress and rejection. Recruiting can be stressful. It seems like at the moment someone's recruiting and they don't really stop recruiting, because as soon as they close and they find someone, there's another role to fill. So this is something I'm hearing about quite a bit, and it works both ways. If for applicants, the process can be really stressful. If you're perfectly healthy, if you're white, if you're Black or Asian or from other minority backgrounds, it can be a lot worse. You know that you have less likelihood of certain things. Everybody gets a bit nervous in these processes, and it's often about livelihoods as well, isn't it? And So everybody's been under pressure, and not having that pressure sort of stop you from having inclusive practices or make you so reactive that you're not seeing the wood for the trees, but actually having processes that empower, are compassionate, are inclusive, that make people feel like they want to be in this organization, that they see themselves there, that the people there are friendly, they're nice, they will be supported, getting started, because they may have worked in other organizations, they may very well have the skill set for the role, but it's a new place. People do things slightly differently. It's a change. People want to make a good impression. They also have other challenges themselves. We all have challenges. They do affect us. And just make people feel safe and included and welcomed. And never dismiss or ignore adjustment requests. If you find that you're having a bad moment day and you're not getting it quite right as you would like to, pause, but get back to it. Make sure to contact somebody after to sort of try to follow up, because it does go wrong. Okay, so we talked about focusing. Next slide, number 5. Focus on qualities and duties over qualifications, training, and experience. Keep ads short. Don't assume and pigeonhole. There's a tendency for ads to still be described in a way where you're using masculine language, and you might not know what this means, but there's a link at the end that tells you. And there are many other links I can refer to. Keep your ads short. Don't assume and pigeonhole. Offer training and benefit from lived experience is one of the things I was talking about. And I realize I'm covering more. I'm not doing this as fast as I expected, but that's okay. Look past gaps on CVs. Not everybody will have a CV that looks like yours or the last person you employ. That does not mean they're not the suitable candidate, that they're not right for the role. And if you're asking for CVs application forms based on what the last sort of the way you've been doing things a long time, you will miss out. Target diverse candidates, engage with diversity networks. There are a number of diverse advertising sites around. There are also community organizations around that you can use. Actually, there's going to be more of a race equity council situation in Gloucestershire next year or so, but a few things are up and running, and utilizing those, contacting others, and you can get my details and contact me if that's something you're wanting to do. Let's see. Avoid jargon and acronyms, which I think we all kind of intend to do, but they slip through. Be flexible, reflect it in recruitment, in your onboarding and moving forward. Offer accommodations. You might not know what accommodation is suitable for someone, and that's as it should be, really. Have a you get some learning on it, but also then the person whose experience it is, person who might be disabled, they may well be the best expert on they are the best expert on the experience, because you can't really understand what helps, what doesn't. Offering part-time roles can be a big help in terms of recruiting. You can get, if there's a role that can be filled by 2 people rather than 1 and part-time basis, do that. Lots of people are working part-time now. Lots of people are working from home. Lots of people working in a hybrid way. It's meant a lot of adjustment in a short space of time. But if you did that, think of what is useful in terms of learning from that. And you might feel like your organization didn't do very well at that, and there were all these issues. And I'm sure there were, but there were also things that went smoothly, but hone it. You did it and probably didn't panic in a difficult situation like a lot of people did. And that can affect how well it goes, but learn from that and build on it. If you don't feel you can offer accommodations, get advice from experts by experience and organizations with expertise. Develop these relationships. Act as mentors, sponsors, allies, and advocates of diverse talent. Get involved with these organizations that are, coming up. Get a community reputation for being an inclusive employer, and that will pay and pay and pay. And we see that with big organizations, we see that mid-sized organizations and small, it makes a difference. My doing this with Inclusivity Works is because of my experience with GEM. It made a huge difference to me. I haven't acquired multiple disabilities. My workplace was not inclusive. It had a disability friendly tag, but it was really, really difficult. It hurt my confidence hugely. It just, I really don't think I would be where I am now if I had had the support from GEM. And it was with a few other things too, but it really, I had lost the belief in myself, and I did feel like I didn't have my skills anymore. And I was actually someone I think who was more inclusive than most before that. But part of it was just the treatment I received. And I was very flexible as a worker, and I would always be going above and beyond in my role because I was very committed to it. But when that's the response and you're going through a really difficult time, huge adjustments, uh, you're not going to get any goodwill if you just treat people transactionally. You're not going to have people wanting to stay. You're not going to have people thinking about other people they know who might be interested in your organization. You're not going to get the best uni graduates. We actually had a situation as well where young Black people were particularly negatively affected by, the unemployment here and struggling with recruitment, about 40% tougher. And historically, we have a general pattern of it. Gloucestershire does not have the most diverse population, but it does have plenty of Black and Asian people, particularly in certain areas more than others, particularly in Gloucester, for example. But it's not that they're not skilled, but if the workplace is closed off to them, how do they get into it? And if they get so much rejection and if the opportunities aren't there, if they're not aware of organizations, if they're applying and applying, then the unemployment is inevitably going to end up being higher, but that does not reflect a lack of ability or lack of something to offer. So in terms of resources, talking about getting in touch with Inclusivity Works, signposting to Access to Work, they offer advice and grants that fund practical support to employees who've a disability, health, or mental health condition. And I'm talking about valuing and benefiting from ethnically diverse expertise in-house and in external organisations. So as there are organisations growing in Gloucestershire, and there are some already there, you have the Friendship Cafe, you have the Cheltenham Alliance for Race Equity, which is just starting out, will go live soon. And you can become a member. You can also be incorporating a presence in different universities on open days. You can be doing it in community events. Inclusivity Works will have an open day soon, having a stall there, getting involved. These are investments in your organization, short term and future. It may feel like a lot of work in the moment, but make it easy for yourself. Go to Inclusivity Works, use them, benefit. Tony is an opportunity hunter with Inclusivity Works as well. There's lots of great people there who've helped other organizations be more inclusive. You have so many diverse, different organizations thinking about this now, and people looking for work are thinking about this. And there's people in Gloucestershire, but also people who, are looking for roles elsewhere and may want to move for those roles. You want to stand out, and a way to stand out is being an inclusive employer. And people's using more varied skill sets, more varied experiences, it pays. The data is really clear. So whatever your industry and the size, a more diverse workplace can benefit you. The Scope, the disability charity, also has some useful information on there. There's lots around. Black Southwest Network, if you're for diverse in terms of race and ethnicity. So it doesn't mean you're going to have a Black or brown person who's disabled, but I'm covering both those bases because they are both quite big to untapped talent resources. Sometimes there's overlap. So it reflects population you serve, broader appeal, healthier workplace cultures. Changing your workplace culture can be really challenging. And that takes a while, but it can also be incredibly rewarding really quickly. And you're certainly not benefiting from any of that if you're not doing it already. break habits that don't serve, go beyond your comfort zone and your thinking on what your organization needs. Just stop doing it just the same way, and then trying to find shortcuts, because the shortcuts, you quite often snooker yourself. So they pay in economy, community, job retention. Untapped talent means untapped potential, missed opportunities. But would you be looking at recruiting and retention the way you are now if not for the crisis? Was the crisis coming even without the pandemic? I would say probably yes, because I've seen so many people starting their own businesses where job terms and conditions have changed. You can do internships, or you can do volunteer roles initially. You can set up to have people do work experience. You can have shadowing opportunities. A day where you're in a community work, you can be contributing to community organization in resources, say diverse literature, whatever, and develop yourself a reputation. But some of this crisis was inevitable because things have changed so much in the jobs market in the recent years. Benefit from that change rather than just have the negative consequences. Okay, Tony, any questions?
Let me come back into the... Hello, Nabeela, thank you so much indeed. That was excellent. Taking us through a great deal there in a short space of time. And a question for you, you know, if an organisation's setting out on their sort of diversity, their inclusion journey, it could sound expensive on the face of it. And what support is available? You talk about making adjustments for people and so forth. What's out there for employers in terms of support to enable them to do that?
Well, as I keep saying, and one of the reasons I did this presentation was because it's Inclusivity Works, and I obviously am a fan. But you're free, you're available to everybody, and of course you can give tips and advice, and you can help them find recruits. But also in terms of the adjustments, what adjustments you need to make are going to vary between people, but they can be small things like having a slightly different hours that work better for people. That doesn't necessarily cost a thing. In fact, if you're working, people are working the optimum hours, you benefit from that.
Yeah, you mentioned access to work from a financial point of view. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, grants and funding, and also some tips. They also have, that's for the applicant really to go and do, but you can signpost them to that, and you can get more information from their site. And there are helpline numbers there too. You will already have someone disabled in your business. The odds are they might not think themselves of that, but there will be.
Right. Right. And we know from experience that access to work covers a wide range of things. I mean, we have people, participants of GEM, who are taken to work by taxi, and all that is paid for through access to work. And we have participants who have their interpreters paid for, again through access to work. So it's all there for employers, for equipment and all sorts of other things. And the application process, believe it or not, is fairly straightforward. And I think, Nabeela, one thing that struck me from what you were talking about was that if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. And I used to work within a large financial services organisation quite a few years ago now. And I have to say, on reflection, a lot of people looked a bit like me, not because we didn't want to be diverse and inclusive, it just wasn't the language of the time. And the way in which we went about recruitment was very focused, must have this, must have that, 5 years experience, 2-1 at least, etc., etc. And we missed out enormously on a much wider pool of talent. And I think diversity and inclusion today is, you know, is very topical. And if your organisation's on that journey, we're here to help you. There's an organisation called, D&I, Diversity and Inclusion Leaders.com, and these are sort of business leaders that are signed up to diversity and inclusion, a national network. And on that site I was reading, they've got evidence to just underpin a lot of what Nabeela was saying about the benefits to your business. But one of the things they said is that organisations that are inclusive and diverse are more attractive, particularly to younger people who get this stuff much better than many of us on this call. They really get it. And people that come to work and are able to bring their whole selves are generally happier. Happier people are more productive people are more profitable.
More like
So
executive.
yeah, so it's a huge win. It's a huge win for business, but it does mean doing things differently. And I think, Nabeela, just to paraphrase what you said earlier, if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. So don't be surprised if you're still looking at a sea of the same old faces if you don't make adjustments. Now, getting started, have you got some thoughts about how an organisation would get started, Nabeela?
Well, I think that we'll keep saying inclusivity works, but sometimes it means policy changes that you can do alongside this. But get your job ads in order, contact Inclusivity Works, have a deeper conversation specific to your organisation. I know that it's not going to be lots of work going to Inclusivity Works because I know you've got all sorts of measurements that allow people to quickly start making these changes, and you've got loads of case studies on the website showing this. And the other Lunch and Learns covered quite a bit too on these areas.
Okay. Thank you. And in the time we've got left, I'd like us, if we can, tee up a video. This is Gloucester Services. Many of you will have seen or been to, I hope, Gloucester Services, probably the best services in the world. And they've done a great deal. We've worked with them. They're one of our GEM partners, and they've done a great deal to enhance diversity and inclusion. And if we are able to, Jason, if we could flick to a video. Now, it's just 2 minutes long, but it tells a lovely story about how lives have been transformed and how a business has benefited.
As a business to have colleagues apply for jobs with us that normally wouldn't have been able to get through an interview process, and the Bridging the Gap process really supports, guides and coaches them.
We've been running in partnership with the Gloucestershire Gateway Trust and engaging with local community organisations to help people who are perhaps a little bit further away from the workplace, maybe struggle to get through the traditional recruitment processes. Bridging the Gap is a week course where they learn different interview skills, have the opportunity to sort of boost their confidence, and then they come to the services for a guaranteed interview at the end of the process.
I struggled quite a bit finding a job because I was like 16 and I had 2 face tattoos. It wasn't exactly ideal for employers.
I come to UK 2012. My English now is better. I'll talk a little bit. I'll continue to listen, and if you have no work here, it's difficult because I have my daughter. I'm not married. She helped me to support my daughter. I'm lucky. Yeah.
I didn't have that confidence. I didn't even want to turn up by myself, and you can't take a friend to an interview. But that's the kind of stage I was in. The course helped me with all that, gave me back my confidence. They helped me with everything. Bridging the Gap does your CV and everything with you. They help you fill out the application form if you can't do it properly. It just felt like a college course, really. It felt comfortable and it was good. It didn't feel like I was going for a job interview.
On the last day, came down to the services, did a real interview, ended up with a job here. A lot of people have pushed me to try and get on one of the apprenticeships they have here. It set me up pretty well. About a month or so I should be moving to the butchery department, which should be good. I think I've picked up a bit more independence, quite a lot of social skills. I think they saw me for who I really was, not just what I look like.
We have a lot of different contracted hour vacancies. It enables the candidates that apply to pick and choose what hours would suit them. The recent candidates that have come to my department, who started off working 3 days a week and have now full-time, and they've filled some of our most difficult roles to recruit for.
I think there's just so much skill and experience out there that's missed. By working with different organisations and maybe running a scheme like Bridging the Gap, you're helping people who just wouldn't apply for your roles, and I feel that we can fill those gaps with great colleagues. It's great to see everybody who's joined us, how they're growing, and the fact that they're really enthusiastic and motivated to work here is great to see.
People in the community is definitely lucky to have Bridging the Gap. I feel like I've won a jackpot. It's helped me a lot. It's literally changed my life. It's given me back again, and I haven't had that for a long time.
To thank Nabeela for your excellent presentation. Really appreciate all the work that's gone into that. And on behalf of Nabeela and the whole GEM team, to thank you for joining us through these Lunch and Learn sessions.